Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a video talking all things vegan / plant-based. So I know recently around social media the movie Seaspiracy has been a big topic of conversation. And the movie Seaspiracy is on Netflix and I'd really recommend for you guys to check it out. From that movie, a lot of people are now thinking about not eating fish anymore and also trying to move to a more plant-based diet. So I thought I would just give you guys some tips and some information and some facts about veganism. You transition from maybe being a meat eater or whatever you are to being a vegan or plant-based. So to begin with, I just quickly want to explain what the difference is between vegan and plant-based, because there is a difference. So plant-based basically means you eat vegan food. So for example, you give up meat, you give up milk, dairy, etc., eggs and everything, and you don't eat anything that contains an animal product. So that includes honey, and it also includes, like chocolates and sweets that might contain gelatin and chocolate that might contain cow's milk. So that is plant-based. It's just solely around the food. So now veganism is a little bit more than that. So veganism, obviously you eat plant-based foods, however you also then have a vegan lifestyle. So for example, you don't buy leather or other things that aren't actually vegan. So I think like shellac, like some red nail polish has like beetle like crushed in them. So obviously vegans wouldn't buy that nail polish, whereas a plant-based person might still buy that nail polish because they are just focusing on their food and not the lifestyle. So vegans don't eat meat, dairy, eggs, etc. The same as plant-based, however they also make sure that they are doing lifestyle changes. So not buying leather, not buying certain beauty products that contain animal products, and also maybe doing other things like making sure that they recycle more and making sure they don't use as much water and making sure that they're not buying as much plastic. The aspect of that could be also making sure that that we don't buy from fast fashion places. So we're not buying from ASOS, Topshop, Boohoo, Pretty Little Thing, all of those places, and we're trying to buy more sustainably, trying to upcycle things we already own, trying to buy things from charity shops, etc, etc. So that is just the difference between vegan and plant-based. So if you're watching this video and you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I could give up, I don't know, buying leather jackets. Let's say you've got like a collection of leather jackets and you like buying leather jackets and you think, I don't know if I could give up buying leather jackets. And it's great if you still buy them from like charity shops and vintage shops. As I know, probably leather jackets are probably better quality from those vintage shops than brands like Topshop, etc. That's fine. You can be plant-based. You can just focus on food. You don't have to be vegan and think about all the lifestyle changes that comes with being vegan. You could just be plant-based. However, as I'm saying this, you do not need to put a label on anything. If you're not comfortable with saying that you are vegan, or you're not comfortable with saying that you are plant-based, then that is absolutely fine. You do not have to put a label on anything. For a lot of people, they might think that they want to go vegan, they might think that they want to go plant-based, however they haven't thought through everything specifically, and they might not want to give up certain things. So that's fine. You can still call yourself vegan if you want to, or call yourself plant-based if you want to, but if you don't feel comfortable with that, then don't feel the pressure to call yourself those things, because as soon as you might do something wrong, you might feel bad, and that's obviously, you don't want to be feeling guilty for anything. So if you don't want to put a label on it, that's absolutely fine. But what I would encourage you to do is to reduce your intake of meat and dairy products. So before I go into how you can become vegan and ways to do it, or plant-based, or whatever you want to call it, I just thought I'd quickly tell you some facts a little bit about like protein and calcium, because a lot of people worry that their calcium intake will go down, their protein intake will go down, and I'm just going to explain a couple of things. So protein isn't just in meat, it can also be found in like beans and soy products and nuts and quinoa and things like that. And people are always worried about protein and thinking, oh, I'm not going to get enough protein, I'm going to be deficient in protein. And that is not necessarily the case. People who are protein deficient are actually calorie deficient. So if you don't eat enough food in the day, if you eat less than you're supposed to be eating and you're feeling hungry throughout the day, and at the end of the day, you're calorie deficient. And you're also then going to be protein deficient. But if you, as a vegan, eat a lot of nutritious, healthy, whole food foods, and at the end of the day you feel happy, you feel satiated with what you've eaten, you're most likely to have hit that protein target. You don't have to force yourself to eat tofu and things like that if you're not comfortable with doing that, because by the end of the day you probably are going to have enough protein. And a lot of people don't realise that even meat eaters may not be getting enough protein in the day if they are not eating enough food in the day. Because protein isn't everything in small amounts, so by the end of the day you should be eating enough protein if you're eating enough. But a lot of meat eaters think that just because they're eating meat, they're eating enough protein. But a lot of the times that might not always be the case. Another thing I want to touch on is calcium. So a lot of people again think, oh, I'm not going to get any calcium if I don't drink cow's milk, or if I don't have yogurt or dairy products or whatever. That is not the case. Protein is actually a mineral which is in the ground, and the only reason that cow's milk has calcium in it is because cows eat grass, and is in the grass because it is in the soil, because it's a mineral. So calcium is in vegetables that are grown from the ground, and things like that, because it is found in the soil. It's not because cows have this massive supply of calcium within them, it's because they just eat grass. So if you eat vegetables, you'll get enough calcium. You can also take calcium supplements if you're worried about this. You can also take, I don't know, like protein powders that you can have if you're worried about your protein intake. Like, there are lots of things that you can do. You don't have to worry about not having enough nutrients. One thing, however, that I would definitely recommend is getting B12 supplements, because as if you're just turning vegan and you haven't been vegan since you were born, then you will be getting a deficient amount of B12. So I would definitely get the tablets for that. They're not too expensive, get them from Holland & Barrett or any health food store, and they do last quite a long time. But make sure to check how much is in each tablet. So for example, if you have 1,000, I think it's mg, then you just take one a day, but if it's 500, then you take two a day. So make sure you're taking the right amount. Okay, so that's about protein and calcium, and also talked earlier about labels. You don't have to have a label on what you're doing. So now I'm going to talk about how you can go vegan. So the way I went vegan, I was vegetarian for a couple of weeks, and then I kind of just went vegan straight after that. I know a lot of people, they might be vegetarian their whole life, so they grew up being vegetarian and then they decide to go vegan. That's kind of like an easier way for them because they've already given up the meat side of everything. Some people go vegetarian for a few months, maybe up to a year, and then they decide to slowly go vegan. Another way that I think probably would work best is if you look at all the foods that you have to cut out to be a vegan or be plant-based, whatever you want to call it. So say for example, so obviously that's meat, that's eggs, that's milk, that's cheese, that's chocolate, sweets, and that type of thing. Look at that list of things that you have to take away to be a vegan. What is the one thing that you would be most happy to give up? So for example, let's say that's milk. You're not a massive fan of cow's milk, that's great. So take away cow's milk first for a couple weeks, maybe even up to a month, and substitute it in with other milks. So almond milk, oat milk, soy milk, pea milk these days. There's loads of milks available. I would recommend probably trying oat milk first, because that is probably most like cow's milk. Almond milk I'm not a fan of. It's kind of a bit watery, a bit thinner, but you maybe try it and you might like it. Try the different milks, because you might like some and you might hate others. So I'd recommend trying different milks and figuring out what you like best. But going back to what I was saying, so you've given up milk, give it up for a couple of weeks. If you're happy, then great. Or if you're still finding it a bit difficult, do it a couple more weeks, up to like a month, and then look on the list again. So you've already done milk. What's the next thing that you're happy with giving up? Let's say that is red meat. So then you take away red meat from your diet. So you've given up milk and you've given up red meat. Maybe takes again a couple of weeks, maybe just a week if you don't really eat it anyway, or again it might take up to a month, might even take up to 2 months. That's absolutely fine. As long as you're cutting back and reducing your intake, then that's great. And then you look at the list again after you've taken away two things, and you say fish, and then you do the same thing, etc., until you are fully vegan. But if you feel like you cannot go fully vegan, then that is absolutely fine. Cut back as much as you can, get rid of as much as you can, and then if there are a couple of things that you feel like, I actually can't get rid of this, it is kind of like a staple in my diet, that's absolutely fine. I'm not saying you have to go 100% vegan, because it would be a lot better if everyone reduced their intake of some things here and there, then only a couple people being fully vegan. You've taken out some things that aren't vegan, but you're still left with a few things. And if you then reduce the intake of those things, but still have them in your diet, but not have them as regularly, then that is really great for the environment and really great for the animals and really great for your health as well. Probably be the best way to do it. If you're thinking, oh, I want to go vegan, but I'm not sure if I can, do it slowly. It doesn't have to be overnight. It can take up to a year, up to 6 months, a couple months, however long you'll feel comfortable with doing it, then do it. Because it is a lifestyle change as well, and you are going to notice changes in your body. So take it slowly if you need to. And remember, if you can't cut out anything, then just reduce your intake. Instead of having red meat, which is also carcinogenic, so be careful with that. Instead of having red meat 3 times a week, have it once a week. Instead of having fish, once every 2 weeks, have it once a month. Just reduce your intake, because that will seriously help. And again, you don't have to have a label on anything. You don't have to say that you are vegan. You don't have to go fully vegan. Just as long as you do make those changes, do cut back, and just think about the environment and make sure you're reducing your plastic, make sure you're recycling properly, make sure you're using less water, etc., etc. Because it's not just about the food, even though the food is really important. That is the number one thing. Reducing your intake of meat, reducing your intake of dairy, going vegan is the number one thing that you can do for the environment. But it is also about other things as well. So making sure you get public transport a bit more regularly, making sure you don't use as much water in the shower, making sure you don't buy as much plastic, etc., etc. Because all of those things add up, and all of those things are going to help the environment. I think that's pretty much it. I'm sorry if it was all a bit over the place, a bit rambly, but I think I kind of managed to figure that out. So at the beginning I talked about the difference between plant-based and vegan and saying you don't have to put a label on anything, and then I talked about protein and calcium, and then I quickly mentioned how you can actually go vegan and the best ways to actually do that. So I hope you guys found that informative, and it was actually quite interesting and insightful. And if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments and I can answer them. And I can help you guys become vegan or be more like plant-based or whatever you feel comfortable with. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below any questions you have for me, and I'll make sure I answer them. Thank you so much. Bye bye.